And so it has happened. Sony has done the unthinkable. Something that I would never expect them to do. The ultimate sin.
I'm just kidding. They made a fighting game. In April of 1999, Nintendo, or rather Nintendo's second-party developer HAL Laboratory, released a fighting game that pit 12 of Nintendo's most popular characters against each other. This game was Super Smash Bros. On the N64. With its success, the game now seems to be a given for every new Nintendo console, and I'm sure we can all expect one for the Wii U. However, now we find out that Sony's going to try their hands at the same thing. But will it be as successful? Well, that depends on several different things. How many Sony fans are into fighters? But more importantly, how many of them will know or even care who all of the characters are? Let's get the obvious out of the way first. It's quite clear that this game is indeed, as most people have already noticed and stated, a clone of Super Smash Bros. And by clone, I don't mean the fact that they came up with an idea that's very similar to what HAL Laboratory did, or maybe added an item or two from the Smash Bros. Game. I mean a clone. If someone asked Sony to make a fighting game with some of their most popular characters and one of the developers said, hey, let's just take the Smash Bros. Games and remove the Nintendo characters and replace them with our own, this is pretty much what we'd end up with. But that's not really the question at hand. The real question is, will this work? Now, first let me say this. I don't think Sony copying one of Nintendo's games really is that big of a problem. I think it's the fact that Sony always seems to copy without truly understanding why it worked out so well for the other company in the first place. Lately, Sony's been giving off this impression that they believe a good idea for creating something new is to simply think, well shit, it worked for Nintendo, I don't see why it won't work for us. And while if it's done correctly it can be pulled off, before one mimics what another does, they have to make sure they know why it worked out in the first place. What do you guys think made Super Smash Bros. Work out so well on the N64? My answer to it would be the same reason why Super Mario Kart worked out on the SNES. By the time Mario Kart was released in 1992, the characters for the game had been recognized by Nintendo's fanbase. Characters like Mario, Yoshi, Bowser, and Donkey Kong had already built up a reputation with Nintendo's fans, so people accepted them into the game. But when Sony released Mod Nation Racers, how could people accept a game that was supposed to compete with Mario Kart Wii using characters nobody knew anything about nor really cared for? Simply mimicking the gameplay style isn't gonna work. And no, allowing people to get Nintendo characters on the game doesn't do it either. Yeah, it's true Super Smash Bros. Worked out well for Nintendo and probably better than they expected, 3 times in a row. But how is Sony going to pull this off when their character roster is going to be full of people that are either not known, barely known, or the fan base just flat out doesn't care? Let me say this now. I don't hate this game by any means, in fact I'm actually a little excited about it. But at the same time I get the feeling that majority of this gen's Sony fanbase aren't gonna like it. I'm a huge Smash Bros. Fan, so I don't see why I personally won't like this gameplay style. Even if I don't care about the majority of the characters, I can tell the playstyle is gonna make it fun for me anyway. Besides, when it comes to fighting games, most people always go with the character that they can use the best, not the one that they easily recognize. Yeah, a lot of people may pick Kratos, but how many of them will actually be able to use him properly? But I know not everyone's going to see this the same way I do. Majority of this gen's PS3 fanbase doesn't realize that Generation 5 PlayStation fanbase was a lot different. That's why a game like Parappa worked out so well on the PS1. But if they made a game like that on the PS3, people would wonder what the hell Sony was thinking. That's the catch to the Smash Bros. Success and PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale's, god they've gotta shorten that, most likely downfall. While Super Smash Bros. Has characters from different games, chances are if you're a fan or at least knowledgeable of one, then you're going to be knowledgeable of another. If you're a fan of Mario, then you're going to know who Luigi, Peach, Bowser, and Yoshi are. And since they both played in the same game at one point, you're also going to know who Donkey Kong is. And if you're aware of Donkey Kong, then chances are you've played the Donkey Kong Country game, so you're also aware of Diddy. If you know who Zelda is, then clearly you know who the guy that's been rescuing her all this time is. That's the secret to this whole thing. These characters are all in a way from the same family. This guy is a first generation PlayStation character. Yes, they tried using him on the PlayStation 2 and 3, but his popularity peaked during the PlayStation 1 days. This guy is a third generation character. The new fanbase Sony built up this generation knows nothing about their older characters. Nintendo's main fanbase, or just older gamers, however, are aware of most of the characters that Nintendo has because they've stuck with them. But if you notice, Sony's fanbase this gen isn't built up of the same fanbase as before. In other words, Sony's success of bringing in different types of fans of the past 3 generations will only make it more difficult for this game to truly work the way it should. That's the sad thing about a game like this that could be a Sony title that truly does compete with Nintendo's Smash Bros. For a lot of people, this isn't going to be a game of Sony's most popular characters together in an exciting fight to battle it out with their favorite person to finally see who's the best. It's going to be a group of random non-important people fighting in a boring battle with characters people won't recognize on a game nobody asked for. That's why I get the feeling that the only people who will truly enjoy this sadly is those of us who've been playing on the PlayStation from the PSX till now and are also fans of the fighting genre. And we'll be the only people who recognize most of these characters plus whoever else they add that weren't used this generation. So yes, I think it'll be a good game, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like it, and I'm also sure that majority of the people they're making the game for, sadly, won't care for it.